The twist, the twist.
Hey guys, Joey McKinley here with JDM Legends, and we have a special clip for you today. We actually had an interview with Eric where we asked him some questions. We had some people ask questions on Facebook that he answered for us. Turned out really well, so let's go check it out. All right, Eric, thanks for finding some time and sitting down for us.
Of course.
But we have a few questions the viewers want answered, so I'm just going to jump right into that, okay?
Okay.
Some of them want to know, why isn't there more of a variety on the show?
Fair question. I would like to see more variety myself. Long story short, we don't really get paid to do the builds. So what you see on the show is basically what our year looked like. That was all on the schedule before we signed up for the show. So it was basically, we started out with we do a whole lot of different cars here. I mean, we do, Mazdas, Isuzus, Toyotas, obviously Nissans. We've done a lot of obscure cars, but, we go where the paying restorations are at.
Okay.
And right now, Z cars are very popular, 510s are popular, and Skylines are popular. So restoration work is expensive, and not every car I guess you can't really justify a restoration on every car.
Yeah.
So right now, that's where customers are looking to spend the money on the cars, and at the end of the day, this is a business. We got to keep the doors open, so
Makes sense.
that's why you see what you see on the show, not because we only want to work on these cars. That's what's coming through the doors. I mean,
All right.
myself personally, I've got an 82 Starlet, I've got an IS300, Josh has got an old Celica, Joey's got an RX-7. So I mean, we're not just Nissans here. That just so happens to be what's popular to restore right now.
So you've been working at JDM for a while, but what were you doing before you started here?
Started at my first shop, worked there. It was kind of in what I would call, for me, I guess there's like two golden eras of Japanese cars. It's 69, 73. That's my first golden era. That's where I think the best cars are made. Second one would be, let's call it like 95 to 99. That was a really cool time to be working on cars because you had the NSX, you had the FDRX7, you had the FCRX7. We had the Supra, the JZ80 Supra. I mean, that was the time of like the Japanese supercar really came in. So it was a fun time to work on, and that's all we did. We did a lot of RX-7s, we did Supras, we did NSXs, we did. Being in Salt Lake City, Subarus are a big deal out here. We did a ton of Subarus, and that brought me into the next shop I worked at, which was Cobb Tuning. Cobb Tuning used to be in Texas. They moved out to Salt Lake City because they wanted to be more centrally located. And we were selling a lot of Cobb Tuning's products before, when the only car that was available was the 2.5 RS, the early Imprezas, the GC8s. So I eventually went from working at this tuning shop to working at Cobb Tuning, which when they started was like 5 people, but they've really grown into a big company, and I was kind of part of, when they were really small. And what my first job was there was to be a fabricator in the R&D department for hard parts. So what that meant was basically like, let's say a new 2006 STI came out. It was my job to pull off the old exhaust, fabricate a new prototype for the way we wanted it to be done, and then send it out, get it reproduced. So that's where I learned to fabricate. And I was lucky to be in a position where all throughout my career, if there was something I didn't know and somebody else knew it, I tried to soak everything up as like a sponge.
Yeah.
If somebody knew how to weld, I would try to pick that guy's brain and learn how to weld. If somebody knew how to do electrical and I didn't know it, it's all about, if you're in a position to do it, learning around everybody around you. Because like I said, you can learn this stuff in books, but there's nothing better than hands-on.
Hands-on experience, I agree.
And so I worked at Cobb Tuning for a while, and then that's where I met Trey, the owner of Cobb Tuning, and he had a thing for old school Japanese cars, and it was actually his idea to start this company. He was like, he had known I had a few old cars. I had a few old A86s, 510s, that kind of stuff. And he was like, it's legal to import these cars and nobody's doing it. I think there's a market for it. And he was like, is that something you want to do? And I was like, well, absolutely. So he sort of spawned the idea to do that, and we started bringing over cars, and I guess the rest of everything else is kind of fell into place.
Yeah. Well, that worked out great. Awesome.
Right place, right time. I don't know what else to say.
That's really cool. All right, so tell me about the restoration process.
So when it comes down to, selecting which car we restore, it kind of comes down to, number one, budget, obviously. We are a business. We need to make money on this. So if the budget isn't there, we can't do it. Second would be condition of the car. What's the condition of the car? How much rust? And then I guess the last thing would probably be parts availability. Some cars are a lot easier to find parts for than others. So that definitely affects, our likelihood of bringing in a car or not bringing it in.
Eric,
Yes.
what is your favorite Japanese car from the last 10 years?
Well, I probably feel the same way as a lot of our viewers do, and we say there are no good cars within the last 10 years. I think if I had to buy like a new car now, it's hard to find anything with a manual transmission anymore. I've always loved the Z cars. If you can find a new Nismo Z and a manual transmission, those cars are still very, very cool. And in my opinion, still one of the last, I hate to say, pure forms of the automobile. The other one is the GT86, FT86, BRZ, whatever you want to call it. That car is incredible for the price point. And it's, a lot of people will complain about the motor in that car and, whatever. It's got an amazing chassis. The motor is what it is. It's never going to be, a super powerful motor, but that's how the A86 was. That's how the original cars were. That's not why you got that car, was because it was the fastest thing. You got it because it was a balanced car with a great chassis, front engine, rear wheel drive. So, as far as something you can get into and have fun with and drive, at a track and get used to a front engine, rear wheel drive car, I think that's a really good entry level car. There's also the Miatas. I kind of lost interest in rotaries, ever since they lost the turbo. The RX-8s were just not. Once again, great chassis. Not a big fan of the Renesas motor. So, I guess, long story short, it would either be Nismo 370Z, BRZ. I don't even know what they're called. I'm so old now. GT86. And you can't really forget about the STIs and the Evos as well. I've always kind of been a Subaru guy because I grew up on rally. I kind of always, my heart's been in Subaru. Part of it is just the racing heritage I really fell in love with. But another thing I really like about the Subarus is with an Evo, you kind of have a front wheel drive layout, transverse motor, a little bit more difficult to work on. What I like about the Subarus is they're sort of a front engine rear wheel drive layout where you've got your motor here, transmission sits behind it. I really like them. Whatever, not the most efficient motor, but to me, it's never been about all the power or the best this or the best that. It's about everything in that which makes the car what it is.
Right.
And whatever that ends up to be, and however it
can go.
Clicks your buttons.
That's your car.
That's your car.
That's your car. Okay. So another question that we've been getting asked a lot is, why are the mirrors on the front of the fender?
I get that question as well. I'm not sure when it started, but it was a federally mandated thing to have the mirrors on the fenders like that until 1983, I believe, 83 or 84. And that's when they moved to door mirrors just like everybody else. So if you bought a car in Japan in the 70s, it would have to have, fender mounted mirrors.
Okay. How much is a Skyline?
So the Skylines, and this changes by the month, by the exchange rate, by maybe what Trump decides to do with the tariff taxes. But right now, for your GT Skyline, that's the bare minimum we do because the GTs have the longer front end on them. So a GT or a GTX is anywhere between about $60,000 to $85,000,
okay.
And that's a broad range, but they come in a broad range of conditions. So obviously, the cheaper the car, the more you're going to have to put into it. Maybe the more rust it's got, more expensive. Theoretically, the less you have to do to the car. So that's about the range for your GT or your GTXs. The GTRs, completely different realm. Those are starting at about 185 for something rough, and they can go all the way to 250 plus. So that's why, the tribute cars or the clones are so popular, is because you get that look of a GTR without that GTR price tag. So,
what year would be a cutoff for a classic car?
So in our world, the way we deem it to be a classic car is 25 years old. That is what basically says, if it's 25 years old, you can bring it in from another country, and it does not have to conform to DOT or EPA. So when we first started this company, there was very, very few importers, maybe a small handful. So the market was wide open. We did a little bit of everything. As specifically the R32 Skyline came out, we saw that, it jumped from being, 5 or 10 importers in the country to 55 or 75 importers. And a lot of those guys were doing the newer 80s cars, simply because obviously they're a cheaper investment. They're a lot easier to give it a wash job, change the oil, and flip it, But the 70s cars, they're a completely different ball game. With the 70s cars, you're dealing with a lot more problems, I guess would be the best way to put it. We deal with rusty chassis, bad electrical systems, rusty fuel tanks, carburetors, which is just one thing that I know a lot of people don't know about. So that being said, we do anything that's 25 years old, but we tend to specialize in the earlier stuff because it's more of a specialized job to do. And we've been doing it for a while, and we've become pretty proficient at these early Skylines and carburetors and the electrical systems. So that's why we sort of lean towards the earlier cars. Not to say that we don't do the late 80s stuff. I still love that stuff, and we'll continue to do it. But I would say our specialty is more in the early stuff.
Okay, all right. So you've worked on a lot of cars here on the show, off the show, but which one has been the most rewarding or hardest project that you've worked on?
I think that one has to go to that blue 73 240Z that we restored. I mean, all you have to do is look at the before picture and look at the after picture and know that, there was a lot going on in between that. So I mean, from the sense of where we started to where we finished, that was definitely, satisfying. But also the most challenging one I've ever done because of the condition we picked up the car in. It was very incomplete. We had parts in boxes, so it's a lot more difficult when you're dealing with a car that's already been taken apart than if I had a complete car and I was disassembling it myself. So just the whole reassembly process was very difficult with that car.
Yeah. What is the one car that got away that you wish you could have back?
Oh man, there's been many. Off the top of my head, I had the chance to do a hardtop S800 just down the street from me. Unfortunately, car was blown apart. Didn't know if all the parts were there. Just didn't quite do it. But I've always loved those cars. I also missed out on a 73, completely original SR5 Corolla that was an amazing car sitting in front of an old lady's house. I tried to get it from her a few times and then it just disappeared. I mean, even the first Hakoska we ever sold in this business before the market really exploded, when we were kind of testing the waters, before anybody knew, what they were, I think I sold that car for about $15,000. So, 10 years later, that car is now worth about 55, 65. So that one stings a little bit too. But I guess those are just a couple.
Just some of the few. If you could have your dream car, any car, all expenses paid for, what car would you pick?
That's a difficult one as a car guy. I guess for me, I want a little bit of everything. I want an old school car, I want an all-wheel drive car, I want a rear-wheel drive car. But if I had to settle for one and just had one spot in my garage and I could pick anything, I guess it would probably have to be an R34 Z2. I mean, for me, that is the pinnacle version of my favorite chassis, of course, aside from the Hakoska. And they're just incredible cars.
All right, hey guys, thanks for sticking around for the end of the video. And if you like the content and you want to see more, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. And JDM Legends, we'll see you next time.